Former President Donald Ramatar, former ministers, leaders of trade unions, leaders of GAWU, our friends from various international organizations, most importantly, you, the workers. Good morning, and give yourself a round of applause. Let me say from the onset that I represent a party and a government that finds the greatest joy and comfort in any setting with the workers, because that is who we are. We are for the workers. We are always with the workers. And everything we have done in the history of the People's Progressive Party has been to the benefit of the workers of Guyana. And the workers of Guyana can attest to this. A recent example is the time we spent out of government, 5 years. And in that 5 years, the APNU AFC government sent 7,000 sugar workers packing. They sent 2,000 Amerindian CSOs. And my dear friend, you speak about women, most of whom were women, indigenous women, sent them packing home. This government, in its first 100 days of office, brought them back, brought back sugar, reinvested in sugar, and brought this industry back. I stand proudly as your president, humbled by your support. And let me at this point recognize the outstanding contribution of GAWU, the workers of Guyana, and you especially here, when you stood up for democracy, when you stood up against who tried to steal an election, and when you ensured that democratic principles and values stayed alive in Guyana. Give yourself a round of applause. You know, loving the working class and working for the working class is not about fanciful speeches. It is about evidence. It is about the facts. And today, I will present to you the facts. And you will determine, based on the facts and the evidence, what kind of government is the People's Progressive Party civic government in the Caribbean and Latin America. And you will conclude that this is a government that has workers at the utmost priority and the highest priority on this agenda. We are going to leave a model that the world will follow, and I speak so categorically. Many people today believe that they can lecture us into what is a necessary approach given the new resource that we have. Well, let me be very clear from the onset. Our future is not cemented in oil and gas. Our future is not cemented in oil and gas. Oil and gas is just an enabler that will allow us the revenue to open up the other more important aspects of our economy that will be sustainable, that will diversify our economic base, and that will bring real opportunities for the people of our country. That is what it allows us to do. It allows us to position Guyana, and let me be very clear on this too, because workers need to understand where we are going. It allows us to position Guyana as a leader in food security, a leader on climate change, and a leader in energy security. The three crises that the world will face, Guyana will be in lead position in all three of these situations. That will happen because that is what we're concentrating on. Positioning Guyana as a global leader in these three areas, it requires hard work. It requires changing mindset. It requires building our competitive ability. It requires building the capacity and capability of our workforce. It requires a diversification of skills within the workforce. It requires a coming together of our people under the umbrella of a common vision that will drive this country and uplift this country. That is what we are committed to. This is not child's play. This is hard work, important work, my dear friends, and work that your children will inherit. And I'll show you how your children are already benefiting from the agenda of your government. I'll demonstrate. We, as a people, must be proud. And I challenge anyone to show me the top 10 countries that responded to the COVID-19 pandemic and the fallout, and to do an analysis, whether it's education, because now we're seeing the education fallout. And you will see that Guyana's policy agenda was in the top percentage, what we did to help people to stay alive and to help them to get back on their feet again. We will stand out as a global example. So, I hear a lot these days about what we should do and what we shouldn't do, how we should do it. We have capacity and capability. We are thinking people. For one moment, don't believe that we are not thinking people. We understand that there are best practices and worst practices, and we have to learn from the experiences of those who went through it. But we have to craft what is good for us. We have to craft what is important for us as a people and as a country. We have to craft our future. Not some fanciful magazine or some person who considers themselves intellectually competent, crafting from faraway land our manifesto or crafting our agenda. Yes, we welcome advice. We are humbled and we are open to ideas and advice. But there is a line. Some of these people who now have the seemingly newfound love for this country did not know we existed 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when we kept their forests, and let me be clear, our forests, the lowest deforestation rate in the world, stores 19.5 gigatons of carbon. We are a major part of keeping the world alive. We don't need to be lectured on climate change. We can teach on climate change. We do ourselves a severe injustice. And today I did not intend to speak long, but I will speak for some time. Because we have to understand the realities. I see my friend, the Cuban ambassador here, and he would tell you the conversation I have with him every day. Although we have increased the salaries for nurses in just 3 years by over 100% in some cases, what is the reality that we face in the region? We face a reality where our health workers and our nurses are being sought after by the UK, by Canada, by the US, because there is a massive global shortage of nurses. And people are not entering the profession. And my dear friend, they're going on contract work. They're going on contract work. So what? This is the reality. We have to deal with realities. So what do you do? We are losing nurses. Barbados is losing nurses. Everybody is losing nurses. What do? We just sit back and say, well, what do? We have to find contract workers too. We have to talk to friends who will help us and send 300, 400, 500 nurses. Or the healthcare system collapses. We have to deal with realities. Policymakers and governments must deal with realities. The reality of the country we live in today is that we are short on labor. Every single day the contractors come to me and say they can't find workers. And my dear workers, I love you. But we also have to change our work culture. We can't go to a construction site and turn up to work from Tuesday to Friday. And Monday and Tuesday we have a healthy long weekend with social activities and forget we got to work on Monday and Tuesday. All of us have to take this responsibility of building this country seriously. This is the reality. This is not, this is the real world, the real environment. And that is why these congresses are important. It is to examine the reality of what we are faced with. Not theoretical underpinning, important as it is, but the reality of the environment in which you're working, the reality of what your country faces is what is important. For sugar, for example, over the last 3 years, and my dear friend, C. Paul, he would tell you, and you the workers know, you know us by face, who stood with you, who marched with you. Clement Rohi and Siraj, they're here. We went to the meeting, Clement, can you remember? At the Ministry of Agriculture, when we were fighting against the closure of their estates, and we asked them for a socio-economic. Now, I said I don't want a financial analysis. I want a socio-economic analysis of the industry because they have social and economic consequences that is beyond financial underpinnings. We never got it. We were embarrassed. They made all kind of comments about us. Then we stood with the workers in the line. We stood at Wales, we stood in Berbice, and the workers, I must say, also stood with us when we fought for democracy, and I thank you sincerely for that. We are not fair weather friends. We are friends in the good times and the bad times. We are your brothers and comrades, workers. Now today, the mischief makers again are emerging. In 3 years, my friends, you have spent $17 billion to recapitalize the sugar industry. We have spent $8.8 billion in Rosal. We have re-employed almost 2,000 employees, added back to the payroll. 1,100 in Rosal alone. The Rosal factory is 95% completed. This is what we're doing. Let me be clear. We are not walking away from sugar. We are not walking away from sugar. We are going to make the investments. We are going to ensure that we invest in agriculture. We are conscious of the environment. I'll come to that. So my dear friend from Jamaica, that alone tells you where our revenue is going. agriculture. We are building a world-class healthcare system where ordinary workers will have access to the best healthcare that anywhere in the world can give them. I'm going to give you some examples. For example, any person in Guyana in need of dialysis, gets a check of 600,000 Guyana dollars handed to them annually. I'll give you examples of how we are building, because we are building a model here. We are building a model for others to follow. That is what we are doing. But I want to say, as this Congress go forward, there are two things I want the workers to be aware of, and I want the Congress to debate, among other things, because I'll raise some very important issues. First is responsibility, and second is awareness, those two words. For the sugar industry and for workers, because I know GAWU. GAWU is not only about sugar workers. You'll be discussing welfare of workers, and if you listen to C. Paul address, it is about workers in a collective way. So we have the responsibility of management. We have the responsibility of workers. We have the responsibility of the union. And we have the responsibility of the government. Those are four key actors that must work in a seamless way to ensure, first, sustainability and survival of the industry, alongside the advancement of workers. We have to find that perfect synergy, that marriage. And you, as workers, I want to thank GAWU. Only last week, for the very practical, pragmatic, and decent way in which you address the issue at Rose Hall. Being on the side of the workers, but explaining to the workers the reality, the facts and the truth, educating them. That was highly responsible. It is that type of relationship that would allow a seamless coming together, a seamless way in which we work. And for Gaisuku, we are talking with India, with Guatemala, to find the technical support service to complement the management of Gaisuku. We are bringing in support management that would enable us to have the best, most well-equipped management service to drive the innovation, the change, and the survival of the sugar industry. We're working on that. The board, the chairman of the board, and management are working diligently to get to the target of this year, and they have convinced me that they're going to achieve the target. And incrementally the increase in the target. But we know that we have to make and improve the institutional structure. We have to make structural changes at the management to achieve what we want to achieve. I'm very open with what I have to say. And I have made it clear that I want a direct relationship with workers. I have a relationship with the union and union leaders, whether it's the public service union, the teachers union, or GAWU. But I will be going on outreaches to talk directly to the workers across this country too, because I need to hear from the workers. And I need the workers to hear from me. That is not ignoring the role of the union. That is empowerment of the workers when they can speak directly to the leaders and directly to the president. That is giving them a direct voice to the presidency. I don't believe in bureaucracy. I believe in flat organizations, matrix structure. That is how I approach work. So the workers will hear from me directly, they will see me directly, and I will be consulting with the workers themselves on how they see things and what their priorities are. I have that responsibility. So you don't have to second guess it. So in responsibility, the government has a responsibility of strategizing with the industry, finding the resources, first of all, having the will to keep the industry, having the determination to understand that investment is beyond the financial indicators. Let me tell you, when they closed the industry down, they shut down drainage and irrigation in many of the communities. Nobody calculated that cost. The community health centers that came under Gaisuku, the sports facilities that came under Gaisuku, guess what? The central government is now carrying all of that cost. The central government is now carrying all of that cost across the country. This is the reality. So workers, you also have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to trust your union. You have a responsibility to work in the best interest of the industry you're working in. You know, yesterday or 2 days ago, Caribbean Airlines had a strike. And I saw the court ordered the workers to return to work. An injunction, court ordered the workers to return to work. Because it was classified as essential services. You see, in life, if everyone understands that they individually have responsibility to achieve something, and then we contribute to finding the balance, because in this seamless relationship, we have to find a balance. Nobody should believe that they will walk away with the winnings. For the relationship to work, we have to find a balance. Fortunately for you, you have a government that is ready and always willing to work in finding that balance. So I will say to you, let's work together on finding that balance, that seamless balance that would enable these actors or stakeholders in the responsibility matrix to work together. The second issue is awareness. Now, this is a major issue. And see, Paul, I want this to be examined at your Congress. Awareness of your internal environment, awareness of the external environment beyond the borders of Guyana, and a situational awareness. These are three important things. Now let me give you some food for thought. If we were here 5 years ago, see Paul, we would have been talking about modernization and mechanization. You remember that? At one time in the revolution of things, the main words used were modernization and mechanization. But what modernization and mechanization did was it expanded the inequality gap between countries. Because those who had the wherewithal to modernize and mechanize at a rapid pace went ahead and became far more competitive, far more efficient. And those that did not have the capital to do that fell back further, and the inequality gap widened. The competitiveness between countries widened Now, they won't tell you about that in all the indicators that they derive as to which is the most competitive country. They won't say that. But those were the two concepts. 5 years from now, we'll be talking about every word in the speech would have been modernization and mechanization. But look at how things have changed. So we already have an existing gap in mechanization between some countries, between countries. But what unions will be faced with, my brother and my sister, that you need to address instantaneously and rapidly is a technologically driven change that is upon us, that is regarded as robotics, AI, and the digital economy. That is what is already upon you. How will you deal with it? Now the whole world, imagine AI, the digital economy, and robotics is upon us, now seeing the effect and what this new reality can do, how it can rapidly change things. We are now fighting to find the legislative environment to manage AI and so on. What is the role of AI in the region? Can we remain competitive without adjusting to robotics, AI, and digitizing our economy? Can we even be relevant in a new world if we are not adapting to AI, the digital economy, and robotics? How is it the trade union would function in this new environment of AI, robotics, and the digital economy? What were the consequences of working from home? And how relevant trade union will be if the future in robotics and digital economy and AI, when more people may work from home. These are the real questions that really face you. So when we speak about awareness, we have to be aware of where the real world is, where we are. The international trade union movement, what are you doing? What are you doing to speak out against the inequality that this AI will bring between countries again? What are you doing to ensure at this early stage that we address the pertinent issues of AI, robotics, and digitization? Because I will now point directly to you to show you that no action is taken to ensure at this initial stage we build a platform in which this new move will not widen the disparity between countries. And once the disparity between countries widen, the disparity between workers will widen. The disparity between income will widen. There's no second guessing about that. And this is where the leadership of the trade union have to step up and advance their work in these areas. Advance their work in these areas to avoid monumental changes and consequences for the workers in the future. That is one point. For any country or industry to remain viable, it must be competitive and sustainable. The new world is telling us, if you don't adapt to AI and digitization, you can't be competitive and you can't be sustainable. What are the consequences of that on workers? How are we matching the advancement to AI, digitization, and robotics to the development of the workers, to the training of the workers? Let me tell you what we are doing in Guyana. We have just signed a program with the UAE to train 150,000 children in school in coding. We are now implementing this in the school system so the children of the workers will not be at a disadvantage in this new world that they are growing up in. We are building smart classrooms. We are teaching digitization now. We are bringing more and more digitization in this education delivery system so that the children who are coming up will not be placed at a comparative disadvantage. That is how the working class is benefiting. That is how the children of the workers are benefiting from this government. Just one example. Let me give you something to think about in this Congress. I have not heard any single international trade union organization speak about this, and these are the bread and butter issue for your workers. What is the situation with the achievement of the SDGs by 2030? Let me give you some example. Just in Central America and the Caribbean, I want to give you, my dear friends, a funding gap analysis in terms of achieving the SDGs in CELAC. SDG 6, which is access to water and sanitation. SDG 6, who are the primary beneficiary of water and sanitation? These workers. SDG 6, access to sanitation and water. There's a funding gap of $374 billion in CELAC. Who's financing that? Well, let me tell you, in Guyana, whilst that gap exists, and I'm answering you where revenue is going, we are now investing in water to have almost complete access to treated water by all the citizens in the coast by 2025-2026. Making major investments, building water treatment plants, new wells all across the country, whilst the region is facing this. Many, many countries in the region will not achieve this SDG because of the funding gap. SDG number 7, affordable, reliable, sustainable energy. This is energy, the most basic thing. There's a funding gap of $577 billion. $577 billion. Who will be affected by blackouts? Who will be affected by lack of energy? The workers, the ordinary people. There's a funding gap of $577 million. Who is going to finance it? This is where the international labor movement, you should be on the highest podium shouting to the developed world, find the money now for the developing world. Your voice must also be there in reparation. These are the real issues that must be confronted. SDG number 9, sustainable industrialization. A funding gap of $223 billion. SDG, sorry, that's number 11. SDG number 9, which is infrastructure. A funding gap of $1.1 trillion. This is in CELAC alone. This is roads, hospitals, schools. Roads, hospitals, schools. In CELAC alone, a funding gap of $1.1 trillion. Let me tell you what we're doing in Guyana. We have one of the most massive healthcare investment programs ever in the history of this region right now. Building new regional hospitals, specialized hospitals, improving primary health care, building new schools, moving to universal secondary education, and yes, free university education by the time we get to 2025. That is what we're doing. 20,000 scholarship. 20,000 scholarship for the children of this country, the working class parents and parents too. In 3 years, almost 17,000 scholarships delivered. That is what we are doing against a global external environment that I'm speaking of. Point to one country in the world. Point to one of them that has these examples. Be proud of who you are as Guyanese. Be proud of who we are. Be proud of what we are doing. Because one day, they will all realize that we are among the best. One day you will all see our model of development on the front page of magazines around the world. Trust me, it will happen. Just like our LCDS is now, our development model will be. Let me give you some concrete examples now of some of the things we have done in 3 years. What have we done? COVID-19 came, pandemic. What have we done to ensure that we keep disposable income for the people of this country, the working class people of this country? Let me tell you. A special one-off grant of $25,000 was distributed to every single household in this country. $1.2 billion was sent directly to the pockets of the people of this country, every single household. $1.2 billion of disposable income. The IFLOT sugar workers who were not earning because of downtime of the estate, 1,400 workers received $275 million in assistance. Workers, did you hear me? 1,400 workers at IFLOT received $275 million of assistance. 8,000 fisherfolk benefited from the provision of $150,000 one-off payment. 8,000 fisherfolk. A one-off payment of $150,000, $1.2 billion in the pocket of our fishing folk. We increased the monthly income tax threshold from $65,000 to $75,000 in 2022. Releasing $1.3 billion in the pockets of people. $1.3 billion. And guess what? We had a Because We Care grant, Donald Ramatari. Former President Donald Ramatari is here. In 2014, we introduced a Because We Care grant for the children of this country. The children of the working class. The last government took it away. Heartlessly and mercilessly took it away from the children of this country. Since we came back into office, we have increased the Because We Care. Not that we bring it back alone, we've increased it to $40,000 per child with the $5,000 uniform allowance. Placing over $5 billion in the hands of our children, more than 200,000 children. Who are these children? Workers, we must not be misguided. These are your children. These are our children. who are benefiting. This doesn't count. Let me remind you, it was taken away by the last government. We give it back. There's a lot more. Let me give you. Yes, we can talk about the 8% salary increases that the 52,000 public servants got also. I can also tell you about the 1-month bonus members of the discipline services got. 11,000 of them get a 1-month bonus. Guess what? This 1-month bonus that they got back under us was taken away by the last government. It was taken away by the last government. 11,000 of them, we have brought it back and given to them 1-month bonus for our discipline service. The police, the army, the firemen, the prison officers. That is why I tell you we have a model. After today, my dear friend, my sister, I hope you will take our model and share it with the rest of the world. Because this is the facts and this is the reality. Show me one country after COVID that give bonus to health workers, bonus to the police officers. There is more. 5,000 healthcare workers receive adjustment to their salaries. Not adjustment to this, I'm coming to that. That is a secondary issue. Receive direct bonus for the work they did in COVID, totaling $1.5 billion of disposable income. Who are these workers? My friend, we are very proud and humbled to be the servants of you. But we want you to know that every day we wake up thinking about you and ways in which we can help you. You don't think it affects us when things are difficult? Let me give you another measure. When we were addressing reducing the cost of living, the application of the freight costs, adjustment for the calculation of import taxes. So we adjusted the taxes on import to save and reduce the cost of importation by $10 billion to ensure that that increase. Remember, when the shipping costs increased by 1,200% for the region? Yes, all of that we went through in 3 years to ensure that that shipping cost was not passed on to the consumer. We adjusted our revenue collection by $10 billion to keep prices low. These are all things that were done for the benefit of the working class. We have progressively lowered the excise tax on fuel to a point that we collected 0% of tax on fuel. 0%. We arrange monthly farmers market. We provided $1 billion directly to purchase fertilizer for free distribution to the farmers. You mentioned the Ukraine war and the impact it had continued to have on us with rising fertilizer costs. That is what we did. $1 billion we provided to buy fertilizers to the farmer. As if that was not enough, we outlined a slew of measures to benefit the vulnerable. We increased the old age pension by almost 65% in this global financial and economic crisis the world is facing. 65%. putting billions of dollars in the hands of our pensioners. We increase public assistance. We give $600,000 annually to all dialysis patients. We introduce a 100,000 cash grant for every child with a disability. 100,000 cash grant for every child with a disability. We have introduced CT scans free of cost at the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation. We've increased the low-income mortgage loan ceiling from 12 million to 15 million. We've increased the new building society ceiling loans from 15 million to 20 million. We removed VAT on building materials, including cement, sheetrock, and concrete. We have adjusted interest rate. We have given incentive so that interest rate for low-income housing fell to 3.8% in this market. You should write a whole book on that alone. When interest rate is rising globally, we have been able to enable the banks to reduce interest rate by 3.8% for housing. You have given special incentive to the poultry sector, moving interest rate from 9% to 5%. These are real policies, bringing real results. Your government is not guesswork. We are doing what it takes to make this country viable. We are giving to low-income families steel and cement subsidy to help start their homes, subsidizing the cost of young professional homes. And let me give you some things on housing as I'm here. In 3 years, we have delivered almost 24,000 house lots to the people of this country. This one sector alone, we have created more than 40,000 jobs. 400% increase in investment to ensure all our people can own their own homes. But guess what? Point to one country in the world where low-income house lots are subsidized by 97%. This is what we should be congratulated on, because this is what you should use as a model for other countries when you're talking to workers. Who are the beneficiaries? 97%. It has to be financed. Has to be financed, my friends. I've already gone on too long, but I hope you have a better taste for our expenditure profile and what we are doing for workers, and a greater understanding as to where this country is heading. Point to one country in the world that has an end-user agreement with an oil company on carbon credits, the sale of carbon credits. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens by critical thinking and positioning. But just let me remind you about a few things as you're in this Congress. I want to remind you about a few things. Just remember that it was the APNU AFC who promised to increase the income tax threshold to $100,000. And just remember, they did nothing, and the PPP is doing it. Just remember that the APNU AFC forced contract workers to be transferred to the fixed establishment, reducing their salaries by 22.5%. That is what the consequence. Their salary was reduced by 22.5%. Many doctors exited the system. And also remember that is under the PP civic government that workers have the option to be placed on contracted or fixed establishment. You want democracy? Democracy is at work. We give them the choice. You go fix if you want, you go contract if you want. That is what democracy is. Remember, the workers normally buy cheap vehicles to move their families around. Vehicles that are 8 years old. Remember, it was the APNU that banned the importation of motor vehicles over 8 years old. Just remember that. It is this government that removed the ban. Remember, it is the APNU AFC government that revised downwards mortgage interest relief from 30 million to 15 million. Can you imagine that? They reduced the mortgage income relief from 30 million to 15 million. And remember, it is the PP civic government that reinstated it. Remember, it's the APNU AFC that took away the $10,000 school grant from your children. And remember, it is the PPP that reinstituted it and increased it to $40,000, and we will take it to the promised $50,000 that we said at the campaign. You don't need to second guess it. It will be done because we believe in our promises. Remember, my dear friends, it was the APNU AFC who imposed over 200 new taxes, including VAT on water and electricity, yes. 3 years ago, under the 5-year APNU AFC, that is what they did. They introduced 200 new taxes with VAT on electricity and water, VAT on basic food items and household necessities. I get emotional with this because how short our memory can be sometimes. And also remember, it was the PPP Civic that came in the first 100 days and removed those 200 taxes, removed the VAT on electricity and water, and went further, and reduced the water tariff by 5% across the board. Which country in the world in the COVID reduced the water tariff? Guyana reduced the water tariff by 5% across the board. And importantly, we restored the VAT zero rate on basic food items and household necessities. We restored the bonus to our disciplinary force members that they took away. And I leave by reminding you, workers, all of you with grandfather and grandmother, don't forget that it is the PPP civic government that has now introduced a 1-month bonus of pension for the elderly, old age pension. So every old age pensioner received 13 months of pension, and yes, the year still remains 12 months. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. President. There you have it, the charge for your deliberations in the next 2 days of your conference. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give the President a great big round of applause for that stirring address that we just got. Lots of food for thought. Brothers and sisters, let us move on with our program. And we'll now be having I was just informed that we have 2 books that were written by the president that will be distributed to members of the delegation, which will allow you, especially the delegates of the Congress, which will allow you I'll help you in your deliberations. So that is going to be shared out, and you need to read it so that it will assist you with your deliberations. As I said, we are going to move on now to the presentation of awards. These awards are going to be given to persons, and they are going to be recognizing these persons who contributed to GAWU's progress and triumphs over the years. And these awards will be distributed by none other than Mr. Aslim Singh, who's the General Secretary of the union.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good day to everyone. As the Chair mentioned, GAWU's struggles over the years and its progress could not have been without the support and the contribution of many comrades. And today we recognize some of those comrades who would have played a role in GAWU's advancement and GAWU's progress over the years. I first wish to invite Kaoli Dore from Albion Estate. Is she here? Oh, yeah. So while she makes, I'll introduce Kaoli.